Hi, my name is Sasha Sivertsen. I'll be teaching a life orientation lesson for grade 7. I'll be covering the topic substance abuse, which is under the content area of health, social, and environmental responsibility. The CAPS document I have used as a reference is the life orientation CAPS document for grade 7 to 9, and I used page 14. After this lesson, the learning objective should be, learners should be able to name various types of substance abuse and where they're classified. Learners should be able to identify behavioral and physical symptoms, as well as name the methods in which substances can be taken. Good morning, class. Let me start our lesson by sharing my screen. Okay. If you look at these items in this picture over here, what do we have? What is this? Yes, cigarettes. What is this? Alcohol. Anyone know what this is? Yes, dacha. Alright. So if I had to ask you to explain these items in one word, what would you call them? Anyone? Drugs. Yes, that's correct. And another word for drugs is? Anyone know what that is? No one? Okay, so another word for drugs are substances. So today we will be looking at substances and substance abuse and symptoms and how we can take substances. Alright. It is in your textbooks if you want to follow. It's on page 113. Okay. So just for the beginning, I will be explaining like what are drugs and what is drug use, what is drug abuse, etc., etc. Right. So the definition of a drug is any substance that changes the way the body or mind works. Example, steroids, caffeine, or laxatives. So a lot of you are probably thinking, why caffeine? Caffeine is a stimulant. It increases the messages being sent to your brain, for example, but we'll get onto that in a later stage, and it will make sense why caffeine is actually a drug. Based on this definition, how would you define drug abuse and drug use? And I'll give you two examples. Joe's soap, for example 1, Joe's soap has 2 cups of coffee. Does this make him a drug abuser or drug user? And then why? And then example 2, Jane soap takes ecstasy tablets every day. And does this make her a drug abuser or drug user? Anyone? Okay, so Joe's soap you say is a drug user because it's coffee. Alright, yeah. Anyone know why we say drug user? Okay, no one. Alright, so let's say why Jane soap isn't a drug. Why? What is Jane soap? Okay, she's a drug abuser, and why? Oh, because she uses ecstasy tablets. Okay. Alright, so let me just give you an example. Okay, alright. So let's move on to the next slide. So drug use is the act of taking drugs that may or may not interfere with one's daily activity. So a drug user uses drugs intermittently. Alright, okay, you guys can copy this definition down. Drug abuse or substance abuse involves the use of drugs to an extent where it interferes with one's life at school, work, or family. Right, and a drug abuser in essence is a person who uses drugs daily and excessively, like excessively. Alright. Okay, so now we are moving on to more the content of drugs, and as you guys can see, recreational drugs is the first. This is more content of this lesson. What do you guys think recreational drugs are? Anyone? Okay, no one. All right. Do you know of any examples of them? Okay, alcohol, yes. Dacha, yes. Yep, you're correct. So recreational drugs are taken for pleasure. Some can actually be addictive, and they also have illegal and legal types. So examples of legal drugs is your tobacco, caffeine, and alcohol, right? And then some examples of the illegal ones are ecstasy and heroin. As I mentioned before, most recreational drugs can be addictive, and they are broken down into opiates, depressants, and stimulants, which we will break down further in the next few slides. There's an example of when something becomes addictive. It's when a substance that causes a person to become more reliant on it. So they can't go through a day without taking one, or taking their substances or their drugs or whatever. Okay, so now we're moving on to the next slide. These are the groups that drugs are classified in. Does anybody know what opiates are? Or an example of an opiate? No? Okay. So opiates replicate the brain's feel-good hormones. So those hormones in our brain are known as endorphins. They bring about a state of peaceful euphoria, so the person is at ease and feel relaxed, and they feel it's like a false feeling of extreme happiness. Examples of heroin are heroin, morphine, and opium. Okay. Depressants. Does anybody know what depressants are, or examples? Okay, what do you like? If you are depressed, what do you think? Yes, sad. Okay, that's a good example. Yes, that's a good thought process. Any examples that you guys would think of? No. Did I hear someone say alcohol? Yes, you are. That is a good example. That is correct. That's an example. So depressants are also known as downers. They slow the messages to the brain and along the nerves. And this is an example for good example is alcohol, where if you drink too much and you having to walk, your ability to walk quickly and understand what you do is very slowed down, because the alcohol affects certain messages to the brain. Okay. It reduces emotions, and it helps users forget their problems. A lot of people who are depressed, that's why when you guys said sad, when they're sad, they use depressants to prevent them from feeling any emotion. Examples: alcohol, dacha, and solvents. Solvents are your liquid substances that are sniffed to cause a high. Okay, stimulants. Does anybody remember what I said about stimulants? Yes, yes, it makes you feel hyped. Yeah, that's a good example. Anything else? Makes things feel everything's moving quickly. Yep, that is correct. Okay, they're also known as uppers. And these drugs speed up messages to the brain and the nerves, so it makes the users feel things in an intense way by heightening their senses. So everything is moving quickly for them due to the use of these drugs. Examples: caffeine, nicotine, cocaine, and ecstasy. Okay. And then some methods in which substances are taken is our next slide. So what do you think? If you think about caffeine, you think about dacha, alcohol, what are the ways can people take these substances? Anyone? Anyone? Okay, drinking, yes, that's correct. Yeah, drinking, yeah, okay, also known as swallowing, good. Okay, anything else? Smoking, yes. And anyone? No one. Okay, so injecting is another example. Snorting and smoking is also a good example, is also another example, and swallowing. Okay. Alright,